Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to the 93rd edition of the Philly Blitz Pod, the Milton Williams episode. I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Markwell Fripp Owens. We're sans part tonight, but he's in the chat. He's already commenting. Brother, we're live. We're here with JP Acosta, friend of the pod. Man, you're almost an honorary member of the Philly Blitz family, bro. What's up with you, man?
Nothing much. I know y'all are excited. Know y'all are still reveling in the Super Bowl win. So congratulations. But now we're into the most interesting time of the year. It's draft season. This is where the money gets made.
Yes, say that louder for the people in the back. I don't think they heard you. This is definitely where the money gets made. Well, beloved, dub to those who celebrate. It's add the one and only Mark Wilford Owens. And I mean, it's been a while. We've been too busy partying and celebrating. Last time you seen us, the guys were all together. We proved that we are in fact not AI.
Yeah, man. Like you said, man, it's been a while since we've dropped a pod, but we're back. Since then, the Eagles they've hired a new offensive coordinator, and we're gonna get into the combine talk. But like I said, we haven't recorded or streamed since it's been a while. Kevin Patullo, Eagles' new offensive coordinator. When you saw that headline, Q, what was the first thing that came into your head?
Figures. Not really a surprise. I mean, kind of writing was kind of on the wall. The one thing that did make it interesting for me, at least, was what many could perceive as pushback from Jalen Hurts. And I mean, at least how I thought about it was interesting because we've always had the conversation about if and when Kellen leaves, how did the team go about it? And my response was always, I mean, if Nick Sirianni wins the Super Bowl, he kind of should have the pool to make his own decision at this point. At the same time, if your franchise quarterback doesn't seem to back the decision, it seems to get a little bit interesting. That was something I never really considered. But it seems like everybody else on the team, and at least offense specifically, I seen Lane Johnson and a few other guys in the comments once it was announced, pretty excited about the move. So,
Yeah, man. I mean, I heard Jalen's comments on it where he just essentially was like, this would be a new position for Kevin, and like it's a different role, different responsibilities, things of that nature. I don't know if I perceived it as like quote unquote pushback. I think it was just him saying like this is something that Kevin Patullo he's never done in his career. He's never called plays. He's never been the head man of an offense. So I think the I guess trepidation, if that's what you want to call it, is warranted a little bit because you do know like the history with the Eagles and internal promotions with offensive coordinators, most recently Brian Johnson. But at the same time, like I don't think it's apt to compare the two, right? Like this is a guy in Kevin Pasula who's been waiting in the wings since Nick Sirianni got here. Like Shane Steichen was hired in Indy. He brought or when Nick was hired from Indy. He brought Kevin with him. Kevin was on the plane with him. He was like one of the first guys. I think he toured the facility with Nick. So I mean, it's a relationship thing. I think again, people are right to have some caution, but at the same time, I don't think that's fair to Kevin. Again, this is a guy who's been around NFL football for over a decade, right? Like he's coached quarterbacks, he's coached wide receivers. He's been here in Philly since Jalen became the starter. He knows the personnel. He's been a part of putting the offense together for the last 4 or 5 years. Like to me, those things have to count for something.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when I saw the hiring of Kevin Patullo, I was like, okay, that's what winning teams do. Winning teams promote from within and continue to keep the train rolling. I think my biggest thing for him is just how he's going to put his own unique twist on the offense, especially now that Kellen Moore is gone because he handled most of the play calling duties. So I wonder if because Patullo is a first time play caller, is Nick Sirianni going to be more involved in sort of the game planning process? Not the game day of calling plays, but how involved is he going to be in the game plan, the offensive design process? Because I mean, it's good. It's good to be a first year play caller because you have creative ideas, you have new things coming in, but having people with experience around you is probably also very helpful in this
yeah.
situation. So I think coming from the Eagles ecosystem, especially with all of the assistant coaches around him, I don't see why this is a bad, or I don't take Jalen Hurts' comments as anything more than just stating obvious. This is a new role for him. Like, this isn't like anything deeper than that. It's new. And of course, there are going to be some growing pains with it being new, but I don't see a problem. They should be fine.
Yeah, I think the saving grace when you look at or you talk about Nick Sirianni and his involvement in the game planning area of things, like I pretty much think the offensive, I guess, brain trust has been Nick, Steichen, or Brian Johnson, or Kellen Moore, and Patullo, right? Like, to me, that's why I think, this was the natural progression of things, right? Like, Patullo's been there. He's been in the room. He's played an important role. I know when Kellen was hired last year, they kind of charged Kevin with, I guess, I don't know what the word is.
Meshing the
kind of
offense.
meshing the two offensive philosophies together. And, he's going to be able to take some of what, Kellen Moore did, some of what he got from Sirianni and Frank Reich in Indy, some of what he got from Chan Gailey, I think in Buffalo. I'm pretty sure that's where it was. Buffalo or New York,
Yeah,
whichever one.
it was actually both.
Yeah. So just kind of being able to, draw from all of the different experiences he's had, I think, that's why it'll yield positive results.
I mean, it's nice to be optimistic about it. And I don't want to sound like a downer because, I mean, I like the hire. I was the one who was saying, yeah, I think they should actually hire Kevin once the move is made. I mean, we all know my pushback with trying to involve some of these Shanahan-like systems into the offense, especially with Jeff Stoutland already having full control of what goes on in the running game. I'd rather not mix the two. But I guess my whole thing has always been and will remain. I mean, yeah, sure, I hear you. He's been around. It's comfortable. It should be an easy transition. But the thing that he was tasked with putting together, at least for what the team's name for what his job was on the year, it wasn't very consistent, to say the least. I mean, once the playoffs came around, we seen Kellen begin to open it up some, which begs the conversation of, I mean, could you guys have always did this, or what was the problem heading into the season? I mean, we always know that if it ain't broke, don't fix it conversation, which kind of leads me into as a play caller, he has the blueprint of what it takes. They said a lot of the game, the ideology and the language and things of that nature will be the same from what it was when Kellen was there. So there's that. But like I said, you have the blueprint. Say 26 in the backfield, lean on Jalen Hurts, the runner. But that's easier said than done, to say the least.
Yeah, and I think this is it's a very good point to bring it up the passing game. And I thought the passing game for the Eagles up until the last few games of the season, it was very up and down. It felt like the sequencing was off, and that sort of falls on Kevin Patullo and his role. But I also think a lot of that was also Kellen Moore's offense. And I think that was something that still took a little bit of time to mesh. Obviously, it flourished towards the end of the season, which is what you want. But I think because Patullo has everybody else still familiar around him, it's sort of like, hey, we know you want to try and add your new flavors to this recipe, but don't forget the recipe. Don't forget what brought you to the dance. And I think that's something that Patullo is going to end up having to do, because you know what the Eagles can do. They have the personnel to do. So my biggest thing is how he kind of creates a new version of the Eagles offense while still maintaining some of those old flavors.
Yes, that point right there. And I guess my biggest concern or my biggest fear for this is that he comes in, and I mean, I don't want to say isn't being himself, because like you said, the idea of promoting within first year play callers, the new ideas and things of that nature, that's the big picture of it. But I don't want him to lean way too far into one direction, like we seen with the whole Brian Johnson thing. And who knows, honestly, how much Brian had say in these situations, because we know the conversation about Nick and his involvement and things of that nature. But we seen when Brian Johnson was the first year play caller, they leaned way too far into explosive plays, attacking down the field. And I mean, we get it. That was what worked for you in 2022. You want to continue to try to be successful at it, but you got to continue to evolve at the same time. What was the next evolution of the Eagles offense? This was what it was supposed to be. So I don't want him to, even in the same breath of that I mentioned. I mean, the idea is to get 26 the ball, to let Jalen Hurts operate the offense within the way he did through the last few games. But I don't want you to sit there and say, well, yeah, let's keep giving Saquon the ball. Because, I mean, he is coming off a season in which he had over 400 touches. So,
Yeah, you bring up Bryant Johnson, and this has been a common talking point again, like I talked about at the top. Like, when you look at the Eagles' history of promoting internal candidates, that offensive coordinator hasn't been kind to them. But I think when you look at Bryant Johnson, you talk about Nick Sirianni's involvement. I think we have to remember that Brian Johnson wasn't necessarily a Nick Sirianni hire, right? Like that was more of a Howie Roseman thing. And again, I don't think that level of trust that he'll have with a guy like Patullo, who he's coached with, 5 years, 6 years, even in Indy. Like they've known each other from when Nick got his first NFL head coaching job, or not head coaching, NFL coaching job with the Chiefs, right? Like they've been connected with each other. So I think, that level of trust that'll maybe allow Nick to, I don't want to say have some leeway with the way he allows Patullo to, run the offense, but I think he'll have more leg room than he did with Bryant Johnson.
So just again, not to be the Debbie Downer here. We champions, man. I ain't here to bring the mood down, but these off-season conversations get tough. Like I agree to a sense of what you're saying, and that was my initial thought process of hell, if he was going to trust anybody, he was going to trust Patullo. I do think Patullo will have leeway. Now, I often refer back to I don't know if it was his first or second, probably his second presser from Nick Sirianni, where they asked him, why did he bring Shane Steichen in? And he was like, basically, he feels like he and Shane Steichen are one of the same. They've worked together for all of these years. He feels like Shane would call the same things that he would call if he could basically pick a play with his eyes closed and have Shane pick a play. They pick the same play. They were so locked in how he explained it. While I like to think that's the same breath with Patullo, Shane had called plays previously. That was the whole sense of him switching with Nick that first year. Shane had did this before. Take something off your plate. Kevin hasn't. So, I mean, I love to think that he's going to give him some leeway and some trust, but how much is the question?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to Nick being more involved in the game plan and the day-to-day construction of the offense than he was with Shane Steichen and also with Kellen Moore, because those guys have called plays before. Those guys have designed offenses before. And as good as Kevin Patullo is, or how he's seen by Nick Sirianni, he has never done this level of the job. So I wonder if early in the season or early in the offseason, you're going to see a lot of Nick Sirianni working with Kevin Patullo on the game plan, working with him to design some more passing game stuff. And then, of course, getting Jeff Stoutland's inflection into the run game. So I wonder if it'll be a whole lot more of a group effort for Patullo when it comes to designing the offense, rather than last year. It felt like Stoutland and Kellen Moore kind of mind-melding everything. And Nick Sirianni going, all right, y'all got this. I'll handle the managerial aspect. So I think it'll be a lot more of a team effort when it comes to game planning.
So they still have to hire a quarterback coach, right? And you talk about Kevin and him, never being the front guy of an offense and constructing the offense and his philosophy and everything like that. There is a coach on the market who is a veteran. He has experience with both Kevin Patullo, Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, or no, he doesn't. No, not with Jalen, but the Eagles organization. Frank Reich. Do you think there's any chance that the Eagles look into bringing Frank Reich back as quarterbacks coach?
Hey, if you're going with familiarity, yeah, that makes the most sense at this point. I mean, I worry a little bit with Frank Reich because of how stale or archaic that offense was in Carolina. But it also seemed like in Carolina, the owner was very, very hands-on when it comes to the offense when Frank Reich was there as the head coach. So having someone with experience, like you said, in that game plan room could help. And it will also kind of mesh everything that Nick Sirianni wants to do and wants his offense to be by having a guy that he has worked under, he has worked with in Frank Reich to work with the offense. I do have another suggestion though. Another person who, well, actually, he's not on the market now, but maybe you can offer him a better deal. Press Taylor's available.
Not doing that, brother.
Gracious goodness.
No.
Brother.
You can get Press Taylor.
Yeah, talking about familiarity.
Doug Peterson, familiarity with the franchise.
Boy.
Y'all can have him. I am so willing.
Where did he get hired? Press Taylor. Who?
The Bears.
That's disgusting.
I think the Bears hired him to be the pass game coordinator.
Mm-hmm. The big brain press. There it goes. He was held back.
Hiring Press Taylor to coordinate your passing game is diabolical.
That is the one thing that I really was just like, of all the people to hire for the passing game, go hire the Jags guy that coordinated the passing game. We had people running into each other on routes and nobody running the right routes at the right
man
depth.
Said, look, you know how to get tight ends open, right? Come on, get over here.
You want to do that little arrow RPO where they're just running right out to the flat? Press Taylor got that in the bag. You want a crisp RPO? Press Taylor can do that for you occasionally, only after the first half because they forget what playing football is like for the first half of the game.
Don't worry, that sets it up perfectly. Ben Johnson can call the first half. The first half. Press Taylor can call the second half. They have it figured out.
But before we get into Howie Roseman and his comments that he had earlier, was it last week? This week? My brain is all over the place. When did he speak? Last
Sunday,
week?
Right? I believe it was Sunday.
Yeah, sometime within the last week or so, right? JP, how are things in Jaguar land, buddy? New head coach, new offensive coordinator.
Stolen new head coach, man. Take us through the whirlwind that was the Liam Cohen Express.
Quite frankly, I'm just glad to see the Jaguars throw their weight around. I'm glad to see Shad Khan drop his nuts a little bit. You know, I want to see you. I want to see you drop your nuts. They talked all this stuff about the Jaguars last year being the best team that the Jaguars have ever fielded, and they won 4 games. I want to see like effort put into this, and I want to see some meaningful growth and lessons learned from last year. And you can make the argument that team won 4 games, but they were pretty talented. They were undone by coaching and preparation, which is why I was so excited that they were going to go get Liam Cohen. And the fact that they learned from their mistakes and keeping Trent Baalke around, barely learned from their mistakes. I'm excited. I really am.
They learned from their mistakes. Did their mistakes learn them?
This brain trust is incredibly young. Liam Cohen's 39. James Gladstone, I think, is 34.
Bro, he looks like he looks like Ben Solak.
He does. He looks like somebody I've done a podcast with. Like, shout out to James Gladstone. We can do that podcast if he would like, but he's 34. Grant Udinski, the offensive coordinator, is 29. I honestly thought Udinski would go somewhere where he would actually call plays, but being able to take him from the Vikings is incredible. Anthony Campanile, the defensive coordinator, is 42. This has got to be the youngest staff in the NFL by a wide margin. And while I think that offers a lot of inexperience, I just think the creative ideas and the fresh mindset that they bring to this franchise is something the Jaguars have needed for a long time. If you think about since Gus Bradley, it has been Doug Marrone, who was a retread. It has been, oh my gosh, who was after Doug Marrone? It was Urban Meyer, who was Urban Meyer. It was Doug Peterson, who was a retread. I like that they're going the youth aspect because Shad Khan has said they wanted somebody modern to operate that offense, some new, some unpredictable ideas. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see where they go. It seems like James Gladstone is very highly regarded when it comes to the NFL world and within Rams world. So I'm curious. I'm excited to see how it goes. I'm just glad that the Jaguars were actually like manning up and like actually doing something to piss somebody off again.
It's interesting to me, like the contrast between, like, we're an Eagles podcast, and you're the Jaguars guy. It's really interesting to me, like the contrast between like where the two organizations are, right? Like we're coming off a Super Bowl, we're trying to figure out who they're gonna re-sign, what's the free agency plan, where's money gonna be allocated, and for you guys, it's like all new things, right? It's new hope, like new beginnings. So it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think it shows how far the Eagles have gone and how their level of consistency has come from a consistent front office and a consistent brain trust that is committed to winning and evolving with the times. I think the Jaguars have struggled to find somebody that provided stability for them, and hopefully Liam Cohen does that. It's, again, very youthful, very risky, but I'm all for it. I'm all for them actually taking a chance and taking a risk. The last risk they took was Urban Meyer, which didn't come from any
you gotta
reason.
do what you gotta do.
The Urban Meyer thing didn't have any good reason. There was no good idea behind it. But with Cohen, the process feels so much sounder in why he was the guy. And in terms of how it happened, I'm just glad it happened. Like I will screw over Bucks fans 100 times out of 10 to get that same result. I don't care how it happened. As long as Liam Cohen ended up in Duval, I don't care how it happened. I'd do it again too.
Yo, I don't know if you've seen him on the timeline, Pierre, but to see it was like watching. I don't know if you ever seen a situation where it's two people on a telephone and one of them in the house and the other one, they're near to the point where you can see the conversation on one side and then you can walk somewhere else and hear the other hand. Like, just from looking at Bucks fans and then looking at Jags fans, like, it's the bastard is not picking up the phone.
Dog, yeah, that was so funny. He put them on airplane mode, and I'm like, that's my freaking coach. Ghost him. He didn't even come back to sign the contract. That's why lesson for everybody: get it in writing. Doesn't matter till it gets in writing.
Oh,
the framing of it. When they were just like, he just wasn't answering the phone. It was the most hilarious thing in the world to me.
I like to imagine that Liam kept getting like repeated phone calls from the Tampa Bay area, and he was like, I'm gonna put that over there. We're gonna put that on do not disturb. Sorry, I'm in the air. Can't call on airplane mode.
One of those. Yeah, I'm sorry. I fell asleep. I just got the best sleep of my life.
Yeah. Like, hey, I forgot I can't call you. I was at the gym. Liam Cohen got kids. I'm picking up the kids from school.
That's what he said. That's what he said.
He was picking up the kids.
Hey, it is so hilarious, man. That whole process was so hilarious. But just to kind of tie everything all back together.
Wait, before you say that, Q, shout out to Parth in the chat. Shout out to Parth.
Yep. You see, he said the legendary battles between him and JP would be legendary.
I would have cooked. I would have cooked.
Imagine Parth trying to do a kick step, man.
I am putting him on his ass. I'm sorry.
Bull rush.
Man said he gonna run through his chest.
The thumb. So put the fries in a bag, pal.
Come on. Y'all better send help. Send help. Y'all better double. Every run play away. Go the other way.
Hey, but to kind of tie everything together, as you mentioned, the Jaguars hired Anthony Campanelli as the new defensive coordinator. Well, oddly enough,
that clip, I don't remember the exact words he used, but like he was like, defenses play, you got to run through somebody's face, or some terminology.
That's right.
I'm like, that's what I want in my DC.
That's
Well,
right.
hopefully his brother is of the same realm because the Eagles have interviewed his brother,
They're brothers?
Nunzio.
Nunzio.
Yeah.
They're
Oh.
brothers.
Oh yeah, the last names both are. What is it,
Mm-hmm.
Campanelli?
Yeah.
Huh. I just noticed that.
We finally got Italians on this staff.
Oh yeah, join the line, buddy.
Italians on this staff.
Join the line, buddy.
That's a crazy comment, part.
Diabolical. Diabolical thing to say. You have him looking like Jawan Taylor.
He said you was gonna be the modern day Jawan Brown, Parf. That's crazy. my man was looking. He was looking the whole opposite direction of the play, bro.
Hey, bro, you remember he fixed his glove mid-play? Hey, Carson was running for his life.
Hey,
my man played the worst game in his life and didn't want to take a picture with Lamar Jackson afterwards. Like, yeah, my God.
Vertical sets are temporary. The grip is forever.
Oh my God.
Dump set temporary. Gotta get a fit off. You got to.
If I'm gonna get this picture taken of me, might as well look good.
Hey, if I'm gonna be on my ass, I better look good.
Man, you know it's the off season. We in Jamal Brown mentions, man. This is crazy. Dang. It feels good not to be referred to as the other guy this time. Not gonna lie. But as you mentioned, Pierre, Howie Roseman made some interesting comments the other day when he spoke at the Combine, basically insinuating either your favorite players might not be back on this team.
Yeah, he talked a lot about the unconventional approach that they're going to take to the offseason. I believe the word he used was patience. Like, there's a lot of, I guess, telling Eagles fans to kind of temper their expectations, or at least that's the way I took it. He talked about how different the offseason was going to look compared to previous Eagles off seasons. To me, it just communicates. Number one, I think they know how crucial Zach Bond is to the defense, which is why they've essentially communicated that like he's their number one priority heading into the offseason. I think, as an organization, they know that they have younger guys like Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Quinyon, Cooper DeJean. So I think that they don't necessarily feel like they have to be as aggressive. Yeah, that's the right word. Aggressive in terms of making like splash signings. I think they're going to be more apt to focus on, the homegrown guys like a Josh Sweat, like a Milton Williams, I don't know if you call Mackay homegrown, but like a Mackay, like a Zach Bond. I think it's just about the price range. Like to me, the way I took Howie's comments, I wouldn't be surprised if through the first 2-3 days of free agency, there's nothing besides maybe re-signings. But that's why I think
know if we're gonna get those, man. I mean, granted, I do believe I seen today with the number that just came out about the cap, the Eagles should be up to around 22 million in cap. So it'll be interesting to see how that's allocated. But I don't know, man. Like I've continued to mention over the past few pods, they've continued to harp on this whole comp pick thing where you don't really spend a lot of money in terms of like the only real option there seems to be in terms of team improvement seems to be inside the trade market. But I mean, it's interesting that you brought up it's interesting that you seem to take from that the importance of Zach Bond, because as I listen to him talk, Bond, I mean, at least how I see it, Bond should be an obvious candidate for re-signing based on how the defense is built. But as you listen to him talk, Bond was the first guy that popped in my mind when he was like, I hope you guys have patience with me and things of that nature, just in case that they aren't able to get this done. Because, I mean, we've had the conversation. I mean, the Eagles already don't invest highly into the position. But if you're talking about a guy who's just an all-pro player who's probably going to get the payday of a lifetime from somewhere. Hopefully it's here. But do you really think that Philadelphia is going to have a willingness to get into a bidding war over Zach Bond? I
I
mean,
think he's
I feel like
too
they have
important.
to,
Yeah, he's too important to what Vic Fangio
especially
wants to do to not.
especially with how Vic Fangio runs that defense and their ability to shift between 4 and 5 man fronts without ever having to get out of nickel. It feels like Zach Bond is the key to all that. And especially like what Parth said, with Nakobe Dean being out for a considerable amount of time, you need somebody back there. I've been operating under the belief that Milton Williams is probably going to get priced out. He's probably going to get a big
yeah, he's
deal from
gone.
somewhere else. I think Mekhi Becton's going to get a big deal to play tackle somewhere else. I wonder if he wants to play tackle again. So I think he's going to get tackle money somewhere else. But this draft is a really good one when it comes to defensive line and interior off of the offensive line. So I wonder if Howie's of the belief that we can let guys like Josh Sweat go because Jalix Hunt is going to start being more in the mix as
And
we
not
get.
to cut you off, not to cut you off, JP, but that's another thing that Howie mentioned, like the younger guys. Like I know you said it last offseason at the combine, but I think it's even more like prevalent, heading into this year, right? Like you talked about Jalix Hunt, Moro Jomo, two guys who flashed a lot during the season. I think they're gonna depend on them, to take on a bigger piece of the pie.
Yeah, Hunt is definitely going to be involved in the plans. I wonder if they address defensive tackle in the draft based on just how strong this class is. Like you should go grab one because this class is really good, especially
Right.
for what the Eagles want to do. I also think when it comes to interior of the offensive line, if Becton does get tackle money, are the Eagles going to pay Mekhi Becton tackle money to play guard? I don't know if they're going to do that. So this class is really strong at guard. This is a class where a lot of the top tackles, you can make the argument they'd be much better at guard. So
Yep.
I
And
think
not even just the draft class, but they drafted Tyler Steen a year ago, and he started a handful of games this past season, and he wasn't the best, but he wasn't the worst either, right? And having a guy like Jeff Stoutland as his coach, that's always a huge plus.
yeah, so I think when it comes to the offensive and defensive lines, which has been a strength of how Howie and the Eagles have drafted, I feel like they're more willing to let those guys walk because of how well they've drafted at that spot. Because they draft linebackers so late, because they don't invest very often in that position, I feel like you have to keep Zach Bond because this guy is a known hit in this defense. And I think that with his versatility, with what he can bring, and with the linebacker room looking sort of dire, especially with Nakobe out, you got to keep some familiarity at that second level because we've seen what this defense looks like with the second level in flux.
Certainly, man. Certainly. And I think that's the big thing how I see it. Like I've kind of viewed it. Me saying that the whole Bond thing is more for the sake of conversation. Like I said, I do believe that he should be their number one priority. At the same time, like I said it at the top of the pod, when the off season comes, when you have to have some of these conversations, it kind of gets hard because you looking at, and I've brought this up numerous times. I'm not sure if I've said it on pod yet, but we've had these conversations multiple times. You, I, and Parth, where, I mean, it's interesting if you're Howie Roseman and you guys just sat here and talked about how great we are in terms of investing in the offensive and defensive lines and how they have an embarrassment of riches there, and how you could easily look at last offseason as, well, how you that isn't Howie. That's different. The acquisition of Saquon Barkley, just the selection of cornerbacks in both the top two rounds. Like these aren't Howie Roseman-esque moves, and it kind of makes you wonder. I mean, you wanted this championship so bad, you were kind of willing to go away from what you were accustomed to. So what will you take from that? Was that a one-time swing, or do you continue to swing at that nature? I bring that up because I mean, Lord knows we've complained for years now about seeing the Eagles and linebackers and mock drafts in round one. I think it's been since 1979 or something of that nature. But I mean, hell, we was having the same conversation about him signing Saquon and him being able to him and actually going to go draft those two cornerbacks. And I look at guys, I mean, more or less Jalen Walker. That conversation is going to be interesting, depending on who you talk to and how they view. Hell, I mean, maybe a guy who has priced himself out of their range at this point, and Jahad Campbell. But just the options that they have at that position where they're kind of off-ball linebackers, but they also could be used as edge rushers. Kind of the Zach Bond conversation that we're having. And you talk about Vic Fangio, who, if he specializes in anything, it's helping linebackers develop. So would Howie be willing to take that risk to save on some money? Is kind of the way I view it. But like you said, JP, just having some familiarity, specifically with the injury to Nakobe there, I think that will play a massive part.
Yeah, and I think this linebacker class, it depends on how you view Jalen Walker. I think he's an edge. I think he's a full-time edge. I think he's a little stiff when it comes to coverage responsibilities, but I kind of see him in like the way that you use Frankie Louvu or the way Washington uses Frankie Louvu as just like the chaos machine everywhere. Just send him downhill. I think Jihad Campbell will be incredible in Philly, but I also think Jihad Campbell's going to go a lot earlier. So you're looking at from there, maybe a guy like Carson Schwessinger from UCLA, Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma. I think there's less projection of what a guy can be at defensive tackle, defensive end, or offensive lineman than there is linebacker, just because playing linebacker in the NFL is really hard. And it's really hard to do that as a rookie and come in and start at a quality level for a team wanting to go win a championship.
All right, so before we fully dive into the combine and draft prospect talk, because I'm going to hand the conversation off to you guys, because I'm not ashamed to admit it, I have not done my homework. So one last thing that I wanted to touch on. This is the Philly Blitz, this is the Eagles podcast. One of the main things that's a big talking point, or that's been a big talking point this week in the Eagles land and national media, the tush push, right? Green Bay Packers, was it their owner or their GM?
It was GM.
Yeah, I saw that. He was like, it's not a football play and it should be banned. And I saw Raheem Morris, he said the play should have been banned 2 years ago, and all of these things. Where do you guys stand on that? I mean, I know, I like to think I know where you stand, Quell.
The best way to stop the tush push isn't to legalize it out of the sport. It's to lift bigger weights, squat more, deadlift more, just get in the gym. Like that is my biggest thing. Go lift some weights. Everybody's like complaining about how the tush push is ruining the sport when we have linemen running 8 yards downfield on RPOs and nobody calls it. So
unless it's the Eagles.
So I think that the priorities are a little out of place when it comes to a play that needs to be banned, especially for the Eagles.
Are you insinuating on banning RPOs?
That's right. That's exactly what I'm saying.
Get out of here. Get out of here, pal.
That's exactly what I'm saying. RPOs are the worst thing to happen to football in a long time. But I think when it comes to the tush push, we tend to focus it on the Eagles when by success rate, the Eagles weren't even the best team at it this year. It was the Bills. And nobody brought it up when it was the Bills and the Chiefs stopped them on 4th and 1 in the AFC Championship game. I just feel like it's become this is the only way that the Eagles move the ball aspect, and not if you want to stop them from doing the tush push, stop them from getting 8 yards or 9 yards first, and then lift bigger weights, which again, everything comes back to you should just squat more. They lift bigger than you. They are stronger than you. So yeah, they're gonna tush push. Now you just got to stop it, or you can just be like Frankie Louvu and just jump over on every single play.
The entire conversation is hilarious to me because it's like you have all of these opposing coaches, opposing fans, opposing players. It's not a football play. It's unfair. It's unstoppable. You can't stop it. Well, then why doesn't your team do it?
Bruh,
why don't you run it?
I saw the Jacksonville fucking Jaguars stop that tush push twice. If the Jaguars dumbasses can do it, some of y'all should do it.
And then Sean McDermott really got the nerve to sit here and say, I don't really like the tush push, Are you serious right now, dude?
No, y'all just tush push Josh Allen to like 14 wins. Like it's a good play. It's an efficient play. And if you want to stop them from using the most efficient play in the sport, don't let them get close. You know, we've made it so much about it's not a real football play that we've kind of lost the aspect of like, y'all should just stop them from getting the first 8 yards.
What? It's so mind blowing because like somebody please explain to me what the hell is a real football play?
Not
like,
an RPO.
Get the hell out of here, JP. Go away. Go away.
Wait. Okay, wait. Explain your gripe with RPOs.
Okay, so my gripe with RPOs, first of all, they allow linemen to run like 5 yards downfield and no ref calls it because they've never been taught to actually call it within the game.
Unless it's the Eagles.
I'm about to say, you clearly don't watch Eagles. Like, he's right. Like, I watch so many teams do it, and it's like, look at that guy. Look at him. He is so fucking.
And they like highlight it on the TV, too. It's like, yeah, this guy's like 8 yards downfield, and nobody calls it. Second, it is a baby back bitch way of moving the football. Run some respectable offense. What do you
like
mean?
A tush push, huh?
No, the tush push is respectable football because we're just more of a man than you. We just lift more than you. RPOs are bullshit.
Yeah.
I think RPOs have become such a like they're like a filler calorie way of moving the ball. Where like, yeah, you can use RPOs to like get like 4 or 5 yards, but when you actually need to win important games and you don't have like the best offensive line in football to run the RPOs, they don't work. We've seen teams adjust to RPOs by just playing man coverage and daring you to beat them. It's not a good play. It's not a fun play to watch.
Hey man.
So what I'm taking from what you're saying, like you kind of look at RPOs in the same light as like video gamers when they say like people are like cheesing, like it's like one of those type of things.
It's like those people in Call of Duty who just sit in one spot.
Campers.
Like the campers. Yeah.
You're just camping. You're just camping in shotgun, throwing the glance, and it's all fun and games until your receiver gets tattooed by my safety because now I'm just teaching him to hit the dude running over the middle. And then we get a flag for it. Like, okay, should have flagged the lineman for being 5 yards downfield.
Look, man, I was always taught that football it's just a simple math game. If you're gonna put two in the box, play too high, I'm gonna run the ball at you. If you're not gonna play too high, I'm gonna throw the ball at you. So if I can put you in a position to make you basically have to play the numbers game on a down-to-down basis, why wouldn't you want to play football that way? That essentially is quarterback friendly.
That's cool. That's the problem, though. I'm not making the game easy on quarterbacks. I don't like quarterbacks. I'm a defensive lineman. Why would I make the game easier on them? I don't want this game to be easy. And I think the thing with RPOs for me is I think it's enforced terribly. That's the biggest thing. It's unlike the tush push where it's very easy to see like, yeah, this is a good play because it's used on you're not tush pushing on 3rd and 4 or like 3rd and 5, you know? Like it's if they were tush pushing on like if the Eagles tush push on like 3rd and 6 and got a first down, I'd be like, okay, maybe people have a point. Maybe. But that doesn't happen, you know? Like I think that RPOs have essentially become such a it's such an empty way of running an offense that that's become with modern defenses being able to space guys out more often and kind of shut down those windows. There's no reason to run them. And I think, again, like you're giving the offense, the biggest thing is you're giving the offense an unfair advantage when they already can push off, unless you're the Eagles, when you can already push off and not get called for it. You know, let defense play. Let them play.
Look, so I guess my only thing would be, why the hell are we not complaining about the damn Shanahan system taking over half the league that is basically a math system? I just sat here and said football is a numbers game, and they basically it's like you playing football with a calculator. You have to be at 20 yards, 76 inches, and 34 centimeters right there when he gets to the top of his drop, or it's not going to work. This ain't real football, brother.
Well, the thing with the Shanahan offense is outside of the Dolphins, every Shanahan offense goes back to wide zone as its base. You cannot sell me on an offense with an RPO as its base.
It's just inside zone, man.
No, that it is an RPO. Inside zone and RPO, two completely different things. One does not have a design. This was the entire thing with the Chiefs before they traded Tyreek Hill. All their runs were RPOs. And then the Bengals decided just to drop 8 every time and force them to run the ball. And they couldn't. So I think ultimately, like I said, it's just a poorly enforced concept in the sport. And until we can actually like enforce it well, I don't think it should be allowed. The only RPO I acknowledge is run power often.
All right. Let's get into the combine talk. Like I said, I'm gonna hand it off to you guys because I know y'all did way more homework than I did. But I do know that today, day one, guys like James Pierce Jr., Shamar Stewart, Landon Jackson, those are 3 guys who made themselves a lot of money. And I also have a question for tomorrow for the defensive backs, but I'll hand it off to you guys.
So what do we start at here, JP? I mean, who made themselves the most money today for you?
Oh man. I'm gonna start with CJ West from Indiana. I think CJ West is a really interesting player. He's a little undersized, but his movement skills were well on display in the combine. He ran really well. He moved really well during the bag drills. He played more that nose, and I think Indiana's defense was just generally undersized. But if you think of him as like a 4-3, like one technique, maybe can bump over to a 3. I think you have a future there. I think James Pierce had a weird day because, like, he ran a 4.47, which is great. I knew he was fast.
I'm about to say he didn't do anything that we didn't know that he could do.
He didn't do anything we didn't know. But a 31-inch vertical on top of that, that's weird to me. And then if you turn on his tape, he's so incredibly bendy and explosive, but it's only when he wants to. And he also struggles to defend the run because although he's 245 pounds, he's small and has shorter arms. So I just wonder what other teams think of James Pierce. I was really high on him going into the season. I believe he's my 23rd ranked player. Yeah, 23rd ranked player right now. I think he's going to be a guy that probably sneaks into the back end of round 1. But I just thought he had a really weird day. The guy I have ranked ahead of him, Donovan Ezeraku, my guy. He is incredible. I think his short shuttle was the fastest short shuttle of the defensive line drills. He also ran the fastest 3-cone, and you see that agility, you see that burst when he's able to bend the corner. While he was at Boston College, the production is there, the tape is there. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't get into round 1. I have him right now sort of the end of round 1, early into round 2. But he's such a ready-made pass rusher, and then with 34-inch arms, he plays with violence and force in the run game. So I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be a first rounder. And then one of my favorite players in the draft, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. He had the same 10-yard split as James Pierce while being 20 pounds heavier than James Pierce. His unofficial relative athletic score is.
If I could interject here, on my short list of my guys that I've watched, Shamar Stewart is on that list.
He had a perfect 10 relative athletic score, which is first among all players at the position ever in combine history. I think people look at the 4.5 sacks and go, "Oh, basic traits versus production guy." But when you look at him play and you watch him play, there's the only reason he didn't finish with more sacks is because Texas A&M played the tight front where he was playing in a 4-eye and had a tight path to rushing the passer, and also he just couldn't finish plays. Like there was a play in 2023 against LSU, he absolutely smokes Emory Jones Jr. Gets by him, gets around the corner. Jaden Daniels just sidesteps him and gets the ball out through the incompletion. It's just things like that where if he finishes and he's around a quality defensive coordinator who can put him in the right spots to succeed, I don't see any reason why this dude can't be a superstar in the NFL, because you don't find that many guys who were up to playing at 290 pounds with the movement skills that he has. So I thought those guys really stood out. I think Carson Bruner from Washington in the linebacker drills really stood out. I think he looked fluid, moved really well. I think his dad, Mark Bruner, played tight end for the Steelers, is a Steelers scout. My guy, Alex Katzen, also Washington. He covers University of Washington, has been on Bruner early in the season. They played him in a lot of various ways at Washington because they played that Belichick style defense. Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma running a 4.52 is incredible for him. He is Danny Stutzman is such a hilarious player because he wears the cowboy collar. He's got the weird like Axiom face mask. He looks like a linebacker that came straight from 1990, and he plays the same way too, just downhill, really good at getting off blocks. He's a good blitzer, not very good in coverage or a good feel for spacing, but if you can get a guy who blitzes well and defends the run, you can find a role for him on your defense. I thought Nick Martin from Oklahoma State looked really well as a linebacker. And then going back to the defensive tackles, Darius Alexander made himself a lot of money. I think I turned on the tape for him, watched him at the Senior Bowl. I'm like, all right, that is a second-round player. That is a early second-round player that like ready-made, 3-tech who can win in pass rush department. And then I actually came away pretty pleasantly surprised at Nick Scorton, who I have actually mocked quite a few times to the Eagles, because if you watch Nick Scorton in 2023 when he was around, he weighed in today at 257. That was around the weight that he played in at Purdue. You see a whole different player. You see the explosiveness. You see some of the bend that he showed today. But at Texas A&M in 2024, he played at 285 because they play that tight front where your defensive ends are basically in a 4-eye. So you had to add weight and basically be a defensive tackle. So that saps some of his speed, some of his burst. So I think him coming in at 257, playing and running as well as he did in the drills really helped him out. Talik Williams, Ohio State, also moved really well. So those are the guys that kind of stood out to me.
Shout out to Talik Williams, OH. But just touch on a few guys that you just named. I mean, Shamar Stewart, of course. How could you not start with him? I talked about it's very hilarious that one of the first few names that you brought up were him and James Pierce, who I looked at. They both made themselves a lot of money today, but they're just opposite sides of the same coin. Basically, you look at James Pierce, who super explosive, has all the production in the world, but just like you said, on the smaller side. But then you turn over to Shamar Stewart, who, has all the traits that you can dream of, just length and so much length. And then you look at the production and it's like, okay, only 4.5 career sacks. Although I believe he led that Texas A&M team with 39
pressures.
So it's like you said, he was always there. It's just about being able to finish the job off for him. So he's one of those, like we had a conversation every year, Pierre, those traits over tape kind of guys where it's so easy to invest in him. I can see why somebody would think that he's worth a top 10 pick. I've seen a couple of guys see him that high, including Dane Brugler. But just how exactly do we get this to translate to the next level? It's exactly my thing. Do we have to get him more of a pass rush plan to begin with? But Pierre, kind of like you said, you kind of like them guys that just run through your face a little. We had that conversation earlier where that's once he realizes that you can't do that and it's time to come up with a counter move, this is where my concerns begin to rise for him. Now, another guy that you mentioned in Darius Alexander, we spent so much time talking about Quinyon Mitchell last year at Toledo. It's like, how the hell did we miss this guy? Just easily pops off screen, man.
He had a pick 6 this year where he is moving like the 40 you saw today. He was moving on that pick 6.
Dude, like I can only imagine. Now, the one person who I think had a really, really good day, if you ask me, and shout out to Pierre. I mean, I had eyes on them, but you made me double back a little bit for you. So my man say he didn't do his homework, but he did a little bit of something. But my guy, Oladipo, where he made him to talk about some bit. I was talking to Pierre about it, and I was like, man, another guy with just dumb traits. He ain't got it all figured out yet, but buddy, in the right spot, I'm super excited about what he could potentially be.
He was one of the only. He was one of the only guys that I semi-watched, and like just off of like my first viewing of him, the thing that clearly sticks out is the effort, like the motor that he plays with. Like the dude is relentless.
He was playing Mike linebacker for the first 2 games of the season for UCLA, and they were like, "Oh, we should probably move you the edge," because they had Carson Schwessinger and Hayden Maldonado, who ran a 4.46 at linebacker. So it's like, hey, man, we kind of run out of spots. And the thing that stands out the most for him is you would think a guy who moved from off ball to the edge would be a much better pass rusher than run defender. No, he's a really good run defender who knows how to use his length and leverage really well. I think the pass rush plan is still kind of coming along. There's still some technique stuff that needs to be shored up, but I immediately thought of a guy like Jalix Hunt, who the Eagles took in round 3 as kind of like, we're going to turn you into something because you have the tools to be turned into something, and you just gradually play him more as the season goes on. So I think Oladipo is a perfect guy in that situation, and yeah, he had a great day today.
But as we wrap here, I did say I had a question for you guys about the DBs who are set to take the field tomorrow. The Travis Hunter conversation is really, really interesting. I was talking with a buddy of mine earlier today, and he asked me, do I think Travis is going to be able to play both sides in the NFL? I don't see that happening. I think it's a situation where, like, it could be matchup dependent, or there could be specific packages for him, but it depends on where he wants to play full time. Where are you guys on that conversation?
Good luck playing like both full time. It would be so commendable of him to do both full time, because we have truly never seen that happen at the highest level of the sport. I've always thought that Travis Hunter would be a good wide receiver, but he would be one of the best corners in the league. And I think his ball skills and his instincts show up much better at corner than receiver, because the play that sticks out so much in my head is the first play of the 2023 season that he made against TCU, where they're in cover 2 and they try to run mesh rail at him, and he covers the rail route, then jumps right back in front of the mesh and picks it off. You don't do that at receiver. You just can't. So I think receiver obviously gets paid more, but he could be one of the best corners in the NFL if he chose to do that full time.
Man, I do agree with the same similar sentiment. I've said this. That's crazy. That's crazy work.
That's my little brother.
Tell little brother that that's crazy work.
Yeah. Word.
But I share a similar sentiment in terms of Trav, where I think Travis, the cornerback, could really, really, really be special. Travis, the receiver, is cool. I feel like there are a lot of nuance and things to his game that he just doesn't have at the wide receiver position that he does at the cornerback position. And I mean, what makes him really good as a wide receiver is kind of like you just said, the things that make him great as a cornerback, the ball skills, just the ability to adjust his body in the air, basically all of these things where you can see the athleticism on display, short area quickness. But just him, the cornerback, man, he has a chance to be really special, man, like really special. And I don't know if it's going to be on both sides of the ball because, like you said, Pierre, matchup basis. Like if I'm a team and I'm playing against them, and that's the game plan that you want to do, we going tempo all day long.
Bro,
we're gonna tell him play 80 snaps, play 100 snaps.
But bro, I just don't think he'll be able to. Like, imagine him at receiver coming across the middle and getting his block knocked off by Derwin James, and then him having to line up the the next week 1-on-1 versus AJ Brown. I just don't.
You have to protect your players, especially if you're going to draft him number 1 overall or with the top 5 pick. You got to make him choose, or not. You got to make him choose to say, like, you're only doing one full time. You can't do one the other. I think the best role for him is a full-time corner who you can probably play like 10, 15 snaps at receiver. Maybe, I kind of think similar to like how the Patriots use Marcus Jones when everybody's like, oh yeah, this guy can return kicks. So they had him do some fun offense stuff, but he was primarily a corner. Travis Hunter should be a primary corner. After that, like, go ahead. You want to play 10 snaps at receiver? We'll mix you in. But make your top priority being the best corner in the NFL, and you will get receiver snaps.
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't think I could put it any better way. Where it'll be fun to see him try it, man. Like you said, it's something we haven't seen done before. And I mean, history's made to be broken. Records are made to be broken. History's meant to be changed. Like, it has to happen at some point, right? So why not him? But I wouldn't. If it was him against the field, I'd definitely take the field.
Yeah. And I'm a little surprised that some teams have him graded as a receiver than a corner. Like, it's interesting to me because I think when I graded him, I think he was my second ranked receiver if he played receiver full time, but he's by far and away number 1 corner. Like, I think he should be a corner in the NFL, but like Andrew Berry said a couple days ago, we have him graded as a full-time receiver. So I just wonder which team is going to be bold enough to use him on the other side in certain situations. Like, if you're in like the red zone or something, or you're in shot play territory, you've gotten to like the other team's 40-yard line. Do you bring Travis Hunter in and kind of signal like, all right, he's in? It's like when the DH comes up in baseball. It's like, all right, everybody back up, because he's swinging for the fences. Do you give the opposing defense that tell? Or like, if you really need a stop on defense, do you put Travis Hunter in? So how his usage gets affected by the team that he's on could be really interesting. Because like a team like the Patriots, they need receiver help. But you want Travis Hunter like 100%, because Christian Gonzalez and Travis Hunter would be incredible. Like, that would immediately be one of the best young corner duos in the NFL.
It's an interesting conversation for sure, man. It's going to be interesting to see, how he's utilized, how he's deployed at the next level. But appreciate you, JP, for hopping on with us. I know it was kind of short notice, but appreciate you, bro. Like we talked about at the top of the pod. I don't remember if it was at the top or before, but you're almost like an honorary member of the Blitz family, man. So thank you, man.
Of course. Thank you guys for having me on. It's certainly not the most interesting thing to happen from Combine Week this week. Shout out to Rappin' Schultz for giving us that.
Bro, wait. Before we sign off, what happened? Did they say Jordan Schultz like yelled at him or what?
My man said, okay, like he was there. He got the full scoop.
So he walked in.
The perfect writer for this is Florio, by the way. Only Florio can write this story. Apparently, he and Rappaport got into a little bit of a verbal shouting match at a Starbucks. And for those who don't know, Jordan Schultz's father, Howard Schultz, founded Starbucks. He got the home field advantage. Rapp got ran up on by Schultz, and he saw the Acosta ball 25, and it's third down against Penn State. The routes are squiggly. You can't hot route. Like, you got to call a timeout. So the funniest thing about this is Schultz trying to get up in the face and like get big on Ian Rappaport, who is maybe 4'8".
Bro, I saw that today. He's like 5'5". I'm taller than him.
he is so you will be surprised at how many people are short in this industry. There are so many short people who work in this industry. And then the second thing is, why is Ian Rappaport walking around with security? Who does he think he is? I said it on Blue Sky, but I was like, he running around like he Pac.
Protect me.
You are not him. So I also just think if we get enough players to opt out of doing the drills, we should just let Schultz and Rappaport square up. Middle of Lucas Oil Stadium. Let's see that. Let's see all the NFL insider source guys have like a Royal Rumble or maybe like a tournament, like Mortal Kombat. Let's see who comes out on top. My money's on Jay Glazer.
I'm about to say who wins an NFL reporter battle royal?
It got to be Jay Glazer.
Oh, Jay Glazer's coming out there like Uncle Iroh. Y'all done woke the Dragon of the West back up.
Do y'all think that they was fighting over a scoop?
So initially, I thought it was because of the whole Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford tweet thing, where Schultz was like, Tom Brady and Matthew Stafford deliberately met up at this like ski resort in Montana. And then Ian Rappaport was like, they just are part of the same like ski resort club in Montana. So this isn't like a deliberate thing. And then Schultz tweeted after, like, who in their right mind like meets up, like guys, we meet up together at this ski resort in Montana. To my thought is rich white people love that shit. Rich white people love ski resorts in Montana. It's got mountains, it's got snow, and it is secluded. Rich white people always love going to ski resorts in Montana. It is absolutely in the lane that Matthew Stafford and Tom Brady could have just surprisingly met up there, because they probably meet up at these kinds of places all the time. So I just think that all of this is very funny because they're getting so mad about tweets. Like, it's a tweet, man. But the funniest part was Rich Eisen and Daniel Jeremiah always bringing it up today. They brought it up so many times during the broadcast. I think Daniel Jeremiah at one point made a Meet Me in Temecula reference. Said that Rapp and Schultz should meet in Temecula. So I just hope they actually I hope they actually do something about it, because Rapp today was like, I think Dunkin' Donuts is a real good coffee brand. Schultz, he's talking to you and your bloodline. What are you prepared to do about it? He is insulting your hair
now. My man pulled the little meat. It's crazy.
He's calling you out, you and your family. Like, it's not just you anymore. He picking on dad too. You can't let that slide. You can't let that slide. Y'all in Indy. What are you prepared to do about it? Don't let nobody come into your house, take your meal.
Food.
Do what you need to do today.
I'm not nervous. I'm
just saying. Y'all get mad about some tweets. Fight about it. I just want to see who'd win that fight.
Well, all right, man. I think that's gonna do it for this episode. Again, appreciate you, JP. Shout out to you, Quell. Shout out to Parth in the chat. If we're gonna release this as a pod tomorrow, so if you're listening after the stream on whichever podcast streaming platform you're listening on, be sure to leave us a like and a review. Shout out my little brother in the chat. That's gonna do it for this episode. Thank you for joining. Go Birds.
Oh man, go Birds. And ball skills.